Hello, my name is John David from the National Association of Broadcasters in Washington, D.C. On behalf of the Montana Broadcasters Association and our longtime partner, the Greater Montana Foundation, I want to welcome you to the 59th Annual EB Awards. This is always an exciting evening, and this year will be no exception despite a few minor changes to how we are doing our show. In years past, this has been a live event in which the absolute best in Montana broadcasting have come together to celebrate all of the hard work required to bring top quality radio and television program to the state of Montana. Unfortunately, the threat of COVID-19 has forced a small change to how we'll be conducting the show this year. Still, we're sure that the 2020 EB Awards will be no less exciting as we honor the very best in Montana broadcasting. Through their work, the Montana radio and television stations provide our communities with the essential news, information, and programming that they count on. Each of the finalists that you'll see here tonight represents the absolute best in Montana broadcasting. Their commitment to excellence, which we celebrate tonight, is ensuring a bright, vibrant future for quality journalism in Montana. A few notes regarding the awards process. The entries that tonight's nominees submitted were evaluated and judged by top broadcasters from across the country, with no affiliation to any Montana station. Of the hundreds of submissions, the top two finalists in each category will be presented before we reveal the winner this evening. From everyone at the Montana Broadcasters Association, thank you to everyone who submitted their work. I'd now like to introduce the chairman of the Montana Broadcasters Association, Greg Pace, to explain a little more about what the MBA is and its mission.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad you were able to join us today for this abridged, condensed, abbreviated, maybe highly edited version of the EB Awards put on by the Montana Broadcasters Association and the Greater Montana Foundation. I'm outgoing chair for the Montana Broadcasters Association, Greg Pace. This year, due to concerns over the coronavirus, we've decided to forego the pomp and circumstance of the event and the convention, but we wanted to recognize the best in radio and television news, promotion, public service, production, programming, writing, all by Montana broadcasters. As we get to the show, I'd first like to thank my fellow board members for their support, the outstanding and professional work they do all year long. I'd like to thank Dewey Bruce for keeping us on track, or attempting to, the Greater Montana Foundation, and Montana PBS for always putting on an outstanding show, even this year. So sit back, relax, enjoy your popcorn if you have it, clap when you win, clap for others when you don't, and enjoy the show.
Thank you very much, Greg. Without further ado, as they say, we'll begin appropriately with the Commercial of the Year Award. The evaluation of the Commercial of the Year for both radio and television is based on production quality, creativity, and imagination. This year's finalists for Radio Commercial of the Year are Sean Hertel, KIKF-FM for Headwaters, and Troy Mellinger, KWGF-FM for Mike's Tent, Kelly Pick. And the Radio Commercial of the Year EB winner is Troy Mellinger, KWGF-FM.
Nice car, Kelly.
Hey, thanks. Just need to take it to Mike's window tint and it's perfect.
To give it that sleek look?
No.
To keep it cool on these hot summer days?
No.
Then why get your windows tinted?
So I can pick my nose and no one can tell it's me. Duh.
The finalists for Television Commercial of the Year are Frank Palazzi and Brian Millett, KWYB for Western Outfitting, Miller's Jewelry, and Rock Hand Hardware, and James Sanders, KPAX for Marcus Day Memorial Hospital, First Montana Bank, Marcus Day Surgical Services. The EB goes to Frank Palazzi and Brian Millett, KWYB.
Here at the University of Montana Western, we've created a minor for outdoor guide and wildlife enterprise management.
I'm super passionate about hunting because I grew up doing it my whole life.
I would jokingly tell people all the time that I'm going to hunt and fish for the rest of my life and get paid for it.
One way in which a station serves its community is by providing important messages and important information through public service announcements. Entrants for the public service announcement or campaign of the year submitted up to 3 PSAs to demonstrate their effectiveness. Finalists for the radio public service announcement of the year are 94.9 KYSS FM for Christmas for Kid, and Christina Leffler, KAMM for Alt 101.5 Spin-a-Thon. This year's EB winner is Christina Leffler, KAMM.
Alt 1015 is partnering with the Sweatshop Studio to raise $15,000 for Missoula's youth homes with our inaugural Spin-a-thon. But we need your help, and it's really easy to participate. Simply join our team, raise $100, and then spin with us for an hour or two on August 10th.
The finalists for television public service announcement or campaign are James Sally, KBZK for City of Bozeman Snow Removal, and Carly Rainey, KBZK for Cancer Support Community, Museum of the Rockies, and Special Olympics Montana. The EB for television PSA or campaign goes to Carly Rainey, KBZK.
Some people have special needs. They show a lot of courage and strength in them. Special Olympics did change my life.
Well-executed station promotion establishes a station's brand, builds an audience, and sets you apart from the crowd. The Station Promotion Award goes to the radio or television station that has demonstrated their effectiveness in promoting the image or positioning of the station within its local market. Finalists for radio station promotion are Sean Hertel, Melissa Farrell, and Kara Kochevar, KIKF-FM for Sales Bell Ringing Challenge, and Casey Kloppel, KBAZ for Blaze Easter Keg Hunt. And this year's EB Award goes to Sean Hertel, Melissa Farrell, and Kara Kochevar of KIKF-FM.
Is it on?
I think so. I'm not a DJ.
Just try it.
We all know it's time for joy and time for cheer, but it's time for a challenge this time of year. This is Sean,
Kara,
Dylan,
and Melissa. We are the Star Radio sales team, and we have challenged our DJs in a bell ringing contest to help the Salvation Army. And we need your help to beat those loudmouths.
Finalists for the television station promotion are Scott Sterling, KUSM-TV for Montana PBS Sizzle Reel, and Matt Reed, KBZK for MTND Yellowstone. And the EB for television station promotion goes to Scott Sterling of KUSM.
When I was a kid, my dad used to say, don't let anything
anything stand in your way.
I'm John Twiggs.
And I'm Anna Rao.
Don't let them see ain't no fear.
Weather reporting combines an in-depth knowledge of complex information with the unique ability to deliver it concisely and in a way that grabs the audience. Entrants in the Weathercaster of the Year category supplied the judges with taped excerpts from at least 2 weather reports showing commitment to the viewers and a statement explaining what makes a good weather broadcast. The finalists for Weathercaster of the Year are Louis Dortch, KPAX, and Elizabeth Copeland of KPAX. And our Weathercaster of the Year is Louis Dortch, KPAX.
Talking about high pressure, clear skies. However, some of the valleys could see some inversions develop. So let's talk quickly about what these inversions are. This time of year with high pressure in place, which is what we have, it gets really cold like we just saw. The cold air is heavier, it's denser, it sinks.
Few things tie a community together like local sports. Sports broadcasters celebrate the spirit of local student athletes and the excitement and drama of the competition. The radio sports coverage category is open to radio sports reporters or a team of reporters for a collective body of work during this contest year. Finalists for radio sports coverage are Ryan Tutel and Coulter Nuanas of KKVU and Chris Rees, KRYK. And the EB for radio sports coverage goes to Ryan Tutel and Coulter Nuanas of KKVU.
Montana State Bobcat, a former Kansas City Chief and Super Bowl champion from Super Bowl IV, and Pro Football Hall of Famer Jan Stenerud. It is a special edition of Tutel and Nuanas from Spokane, Washington, the Big Sky Football Media Days. Dan Hawkins joining us. He's the head coach of the UC Davis Aggies.
The television sports story or series category is open to a sports reporter or team for a single story or a series on the same subject. The finalists this year are Sean Newton and Dylan Davies, KXLH, for Megan Fisher, Under the Big Sky, and Thomas Wiley of KRTV for Montana Rodeo Stories, A Way of Life. And the winner is Thomas Wiley of KRTV.
I remember getting on that horse and it was just almost like the stars just aligned. Like the horse just did everything. And he said, Dougie Hall, you're champion bronc rider of the Kalispell Pro Rodeo. And I war hooped as loud as I could and I started crying. And I could feel my mom, and she was there.
The Sportscaster of the Year category is open to radio and television sports announcers in a single market or network of Montana stations. The judges reviewed examples from more than one event in order to examine meaningful analysis and relevant commentary on sporting events. The finalists for Radio Sportscaster of the Year are Ron Bruschi, KOJM, KPQX, KRYK, and Troy Mellinger of KXGF AM. The 2020 Radio Sportscaster EB is awarded to Troy Mellinger, KXGF AM.
Welcome to the second tier here on the campus of C.M. Russell High at the Seymour Fieldhouse as we get ready for some Thursday Night Thunder. With his third defensive board. Pull-up jumper again, but this time it won't fall in, and Wyman takes up the DB for Great Falls High.
Finalists for Television Sportscaster of the Year are Kevin Levine of KECI and Richie Melby of KTVH. Sportscaster of the Year is Richie Melby of KTVH.
Montana Western has a history, a long-standing history, of bringing those football players of Hawaiian descent to Dillon, Montana. It dates back years and years and years. So we set out to learn when this began, why it continues, and what those Hawaiian-born players think of Southern Montana.
The Radio News Story Award is given to the best news reporter or team for breaking news or news enterprise. Entries may be a single news story or up to 3 examples of news enterprise coverage. Finalists for this year's Radio News Story are Peter Christian of KGVO for the ambush of Montana Highway Patrol Trooper Wade Palmer, and Edward O'Brien, KUFM, for the legal battle over vaping in Montana. The winner, Peter Christian, KGVO.
Jonathan Birch, the man accused of shooting one man to death and gravely wounding 3 others on March 14th, including a Montana Highway Patrol trooper, was arraigned in Missoula District Court on Thursday and appeared via video from the Missoula County Jail.
Great writing is the foundation of any engaging broadcast, and our first writing award is for a commercial or a public service campaign. Finalists for television writer, commercial, and public service are Alex Lilly of KPAX and Carly Rainey of KBZK. This year's winner, Carly Rainey, KBZK.
Be quiet. You be quiet. Mom's gonna catch us. Mom's not gonna catch us. Just be quiet.
Get lit. Distinctive lighting. Bozeman.
The second writing category is for news and long-form programming. Entrants submitted both scripts and the finished work for judges to evaluate. Finalists for the television writer, news and long-form programming are Kevin Mackey, KECI, and Cindy Kouras of KECI. And the winner is Kevin Mackey, KECI.
Unique stories that define our state's character. Here's Kevin Mackey with your Montana Moment.
The Roe River measures an average of 201 feet in length. It flows parallel to the mighty Missouri River.
The Missouri River is actually the longest river in the country. And then right next to it, we have the Roe, which is the shortest river in the world.
Radio Copywriter of the Year is judged on 3 examples of copy specifically written for local clients. Although entries were based on the copy itself, the judges also listened to the final commercials. Finalists for Radio Copywriter of the Year are Kevin Scalure, KIMO, KMTX for Yule Tales, and Dan Walter, Brian Braunberger, and Scott Davis of KOFI, and KZMN, KOLK for Toro Snowblowers movie trailer. And the 2020 EB for Radio Copywriter of the Year goes to Kevin Scalure, KIMO, KMTX.
A few years ago, researchers discovered a fruitcake in Antarctica, believed to have been left there in 1911. It had a slight whiff of rancid butter, but otherwise it looked and smelled edible. For Christmas, you could give him a fruitcake or a Filson 100% wool Mackinaw vest from Capital Sports.
Let's take a break for a little background about the EB Awards themselves. This awards tradition in Montana is a true partnership between the Montana Broadcasters Association and the Greater Montana Foundation, created by EB Craney. The GMF is a tremendous asset to our industry, and their support of this evening speaks to EB Craney's vision and their mission statement: to benefit the people of Montana by encouraging communication with an emphasis on electronic media, on issues, trends, and values of importance to present and future generations. The individuals, teams, and stations honored here tonight represent excellence in Montana broadcasting and the commitment that all of us as broadcasters share to serve our communities. I think it's only fitting to introduce the chair of the Greater Montana Foundation's Board of Directors, MBA board member, and president and CEO of Butte Broadcasters, and a great friend. Here's Ron Davis.
Thank you, John. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As we gather tonight to celebrate excellence in broadcasting in Montana, we have to go back to 1958, when Ed Craney and his wife Connie started the Greater Montana Foundation with the idea of devoting its time to develop communications of issues of importance for the people of Montana. In 1961, with that in mind, the Greater Montana Foundation created the first radio and television awards for excellence to help spur the development of reporting, programming, and even technical use within the state of Montana to help Montana broadcasters be proud to be a part of the Montana Communications Network. Well, tonight we see the work that the Montana broadcasters have put together. Your free over-the-air broadcasters have been working hard to drive for excellence. And tonight we not only salute our winners, we salute all those who even entered the Greater Montana Foundation EB Craney Awards, because your push for excellence has pushed others as well to give Montanans quality broadcasting. Also tonight, we salute the people of Montana, who are the true winners. According to Ed Craney's philosophy and his vision, the people of Montana need to have quality reporting on issues of importance to Montanans. And through surveys conducted by the Greater Montana Foundation, we know for a fact that Montanans respect, trust, and believe what Montana broadcasters provide them. Thank you for joining us tonight. And thank you to the Board of Trustees of the Greater Montana Foundation for keeping these awards alive for the last 59 years.
Thank you very much, Ron. And our sincere thanks to the GMF for continuing to support quality broadcasting and the Montana Broadcasters Association. And congratulations to all of tonight's honorees on a great body of work. You represent the best in Montana broadcasting. I'd like to thank the Montana Broadcasters Association and the Greater Montana Foundation for asking me to host the EB Awards again this evening. It's a pleasure to be on TV in Montana, since I have a face for radio and a voice for newspaper. I'm in Washington, D.C., where not much is going on, except my barber is still quarantined, and this is more hair than I've had ever. The beard is a bonus, so you know for sure that I've been staying home as ordered. Before we continue the awards, I have a couple of questions that I'd like for you to consider. First, who is this guy Pete, and why do we always do things for Pete's sake? And did you hear about the Montana dentist that married the manicurist? They fought tooth and nail. And if the number 2 pencil is still the most popular, why is it still number 2? And why do fat chance and slim chance mean the same thing? Well, let's get on with the awards. I know what you're saying to yourself. How can he be so funny? Now, the broadcast world isn't restricted to what's on air. Station websites are places in which the audience can go for further information about a story, search for upcoming events, or find out a little background on their favorite on-air personalities. Judges for Radio and Television Website of the Year were looking for local relevance, visibility, usability, the creative use of technology, as well as journalistic and storytelling skill. Finalists for TV Website of the Year are Jessica Hilgendorf, KULR, for KULR8.com, and Sean Newton and Dylan Davies of KXLH for the Under This Big Sky website. The 2020 EB for Television Website of the Year goes to Jessica Hilgendorf of KULR. Finalists for Radio Website of the Year are Tony Vigliotti of KOJM and KPQX and KRYK for Highline Today, and Josh Burnham, mptr.org. The 2020 EB for Radio Website of the Year goes to Josh Burnham, mptr.org. The television hard news category recognizes a news reporter or team for a single hard news story, series, or investigative reporting. Evaluations were based on news value, creativity, and production quality. The finalists for television hard news are Laura Staples, Cindy Kouris, Ben Priestley, Willie Miller, Scott Ashelman, and Maria Weisenhunt, KECI, for On the Northern Border. And Becky Hillier, Connor Minahan, Jessica Hilgendorf, Philip Onimus, and Christine Cleveland from KULR for Crime Files, Marty Etchemendy. The EB goes to Becky Hillier, Connor Minahan, Jessica Hilgendorf, Philip Onimus, and Christine Cleveland of KULR.
Once in custody, Diane and Doretta started talking, and what they were saying was difficult to process, too terrible to comprehend. A painfully detailed account of roughly 17 hours of physical and mental torture Marty endured once they left the parking lot of the Golden West that dark, fateful Saturday morning. Marty's world, once so full of promise, had come to a violent end.
The television feature news category recognizes excellence in a feature, story, or series on the same topic. Judges looked for both imagination and substance, as well as production quality. Finalists for television feature news are Heidi Miley and Ben Priestley, KECI, for Search for Baby Buried Alive, and Scott Breen and Brandon Sullivan for KTVQ for Play Like a Girl, Laura Cummings. And the winner is Scott Breen and Brandon Sullivan, KTVQ.
My passion mainly started when my cousins were talking smack. So then I really wanted to play football and they wanted me to play too so we could play against each other. So then I joined and then I've just been hooked ever since.
The final television news category is for coverage of same-day breaking news. Similarly, judges here were looking for news value, substance, and production quality. Finalists for television breaking news are the KPAX news team for KPAX breaking news, trooper shooting coverage, and Russ Riesinger for KTVQ for Amanda Finner, cold case solved. And the winner is the KPAX news team.
Breaking news, officers from across Missoula County and even neighboring counties remain on the lookout for a suspect who was not involved in just one, but two overnight shootouts. Dennis Bragg explains how this crisis began to develop late last night.
Missoula police received the initial call shortly before 11 p.m. Thursday night with reports of gunfire and that multiple people had been shot near the Stone Creek Lodge at Expressway and Tanager Way.
Now on to one of the toughest categories to judge. We enter into the Program of the Year Awards. This category can pit shows of radically different types against one another. To crown a winner, judges are asked to consider the show's creativity, imagination, substance, and production quality. Entries submitted were either a standalone program or part of a series. Finalists for Commercial Radio Program of the Year are Blake Simonson and Angela Marshall, KTMF, for Montana Murder Mysteries, and Sarah Aronson of KUFM for We Leave the Flowers Where They Are, True Stories of Montana Women. The 2020 EB for Commercial Radio Program of the Year goes to Blake Simonson and Angela Marshall of KTMF.
The day that we got the news was the worst day of my life. And it's been the worst day of my life.
Holly Block recalls the day she found out her older sister, Darlene Wilcock, was murdered. The 26-year-old was found naked and strangled to death in a Kalispell motel room in the spring of 2003. Almost 17 years later, Darlene's death remains Kalispell's only unsolved murder.
Finalists for the 2020 Television Program of the Year are Sean Newton and Dylan Davies, KXLH, for Under the Big Sky sessions, and Sarah Gravely and Ben Weinman, KTMF, for Gertie's Babies. And the EB goes to Sean Newton and Dylan Davies of KXLH.
All right, so to answer your question, how'd this thing start? A couple pints and a guitar, and here we go. And I got this idea for a song. And 20 years later, I've got another idea for a song. The ideas never go away.
They say we're crazy.
The finalists for Non-Commercial Radio Program of the Year are John Floridis, KUFM, for Raheem Ahaj, Overcoming Saddam and Bringing the Musical Soul of Baghdad to America, and Sarah Aronson, KUFM, for Fall Back Down When I Die with Joe Wilkins. The EB goes to John Floridis, KUFM.
This little boy holding the program with my picture in it, and he was in tears. And I said in bad English, I said, "You don't like my music, don't you?" He said, "No, I adored it. I loved it, but I need your autograph." I said, wow.
Finalists for Non-Commercial Television Program of the Year are William Marcus, John Twiggs, Gus Chambers, and Ray Eknes of Montana PBS for Back Road of Montana, Rumors and Ringers, and Jackie Coffin, KUSM, for the Rundown with Jackie Coffin, Fighting Her Wars. And the winner of the 2020 EB for Non-Commercial Television Program of the Year is Jackie Coffin, KUSM.
When they first came out with if they should allow women on the front lines, it was ironic because we had already been on the front lines.
There was a lot of nurses killed during World War II.
I was deployed during a Desert Shield, Desert Storm.
We went to Baghdad, Iraq. We were combat military police officers.
Women are the fastest growing population of the U.S. military.
In order to enter this next category, stations tape their primary newscast each day for a designated one-week period in early March. Only after the fact were they informed of which day was EB News Day. The day was specifically selected to be market neutral, and if a big event happened in any market, the day was excluded from the competition. Finalists for Radio Newscast of the Year are Troy Mellinger, KWGF-FM, and Kurt Kittleson and Troy Shockley of KCAP. And the EB goes to Kurt Kittleson and Troy Shockley, KCAP.
Good morning, I'm Kurt Kittleson.
And I'm Troy Shockley.
Coming up this half hour on News Radio 95.
KCAP.
20 million people under a travel ban in China because of a new virus. I'm Sherry Preston, ABC News. The story coming up.
The field in the race for governor becomes a bit smaller.
And warm weather and lack of snow has led to the cancellation of some winter events.
Finalists for Television Newscast of the Year are NBC Montana News Team, KECI, and Emily Adamson, Blake Simonson, and Joe Lesser of KTMF and KWYB. WYB. The 2020 EB for Television Newscasts of the Year is the NBC Montana News Team, KECI.
1,200 square miles, and now a new rescue tool to save lives. Plus, check out this video to help Kalispell police solve a crime. But first, our top story. 3 well-known Butte businesses are in ruins after an early morning fire tore through a historic Butte building.
The On-Air Broadcaster of the Year is presented to an individual who has demonstrated overall professional excellence. This category is eligible to on-air talent in any capacity. Entrants submit a 15 to 30-minute taped presentation and a personal statement. The judges look for quality and professionalism, but other intangibles like community involvement are also considered. And the finalists for Radio On-Air Broadcaster of the Year are Troy Shockley of KCAP and Brian Lee and Chris Wolf of KZOQ. Our 2020 EB winner and Radio On-Air Broadcaster of the Year is Brian Lee and Chris Wolf of KZOQ for the Brian and Chris Show.
You, Martin, what is your drive-through pet peeve, huh?
Those infamous words, "Can you pull ahead, sir, and we'll have your order ready in a moment."
And then you block the whole drive-through and everybody's mad at you, and they're like, "Oh, what did he order?"
You know, last time that happened to me, I said, "No, just give me my money back." It's amazing how fast they come up with your order when you ask that.
Finalists for Television On-Air Broadcaster of the Year are Shannon Newth of KRTV and Ben Weinman of KTMF. Our 2020 EB winner and Television On-Air Broadcaster of the Year is Shannon Newth of KRTV.
Well, let's talk about arrests then. Does it change because of the situation of overcrowding at the jail? Does it change arrests being made or who's being sent to the county jail when they're arrested?
Thanks for making KRTV part of your Monday night. I'm Shannon Newth. Thank you for watching, for your kind words and your support. We do what we do to serve you, our neighbors, friends, and our community.
On behalf of the Montana Broadcasters Association, the Greater Montana Foundation, let me thank all of this year's entrants for their participation, and congratulations to all of the finalists and the EB winners. And thank all of you for watching tonight and listening. Have a wonderful evening, stay safe, and stay well. Thank you.